You're supposed to put the first 500 in the safe and lose the combination.
Hey yo, what is up everyone? It's your boy Kev. Welcome back to yet another exciting video. Today we're going to be looking at a simple strategy that you guys can actually use into your trading. You can also even double your account if you use the strategy correctly. And what this strategy actually entails is that you're going to be trading your breakouts. So it's a trend line breaking strategy. And when the market actually breaks your trend lines, that's when you're going to be taking trades in that direction. So what I'm actually saying, or what I actually mean from that, is that when we are looking at what's happening right here, first we're going to be studying on a weekly chart, by the way. This is Australian dollar versus US dollar. We're going to be studying on the weekly chart. And the first thing that you want to do, okay, let's hop onto the weekly chart. And the first thing that we're going to be doing is that we're going to be marking our highest point. So we mark our highest point right here and we mark our lowest point. And the reason why we're doing this is because we actually want to know our playground. We want to know the area in which we're going to be playing in, and we want to make it as simple as possible for us to actually understand what the market is actually doing. So we're going to be marking the highest point and then the lowest point. You can also mark the second highest point, the second lowest point, third highest point, and we can just leave this point right here. And this is what we actually going to be focusing on. This is the level that we're going to be focusing on. We don't necessarily have to know what happened here because this is weeks and even a couple of months ago. So we don't necessarily need to know what happened here, but we want to know what's really going on in this area because these are the candles that are actually going to affect future price. We know that these are the levels that are going to affect and influence where price is going to be going and moving in the future. So what we can see right here is that the market actually pushed to the downside. It was in a downtrend, and we can just draw another line like that, and we can clearly see that this is a downtrend. And we know that in a downtrend we're only focusing on sells because those are the strong moves to the downside. So what I actually mean by that is when you look at what's happening right here, you can clearly see that the moves pushing up are shorter or are smaller in comparison to the moves that are actually going down. When we look at what happened right here, we can clearly see that the market pushed up a little bit, but when it started going down, it made a huge move pushing all the way to the downside. This actually tells us that the market is in a very strong downtrend and we should actually be focusing on pushes to the downside. You do not want to go against the trend. The trend is your friend and you want to move with the trend. When you move against the trend, the market is not going to offer you proper trading setups, and you will be caught in a trap thinking that the market is actually going to push all the way to the upside, but it's just going to push up a little bit before it continues pushing to the downside. So instead of trading impulsive moves, you're going to be focusing on corrective moves, and that is not a good thing. So going back to what is actually going on right here, we can clearly see that the market is actually pushing to the downside, and you want to focus on trends that are actually pushing to the downside. So this was an uptrend pushing all the way to the upside, but at the break of that trend, we could have taken a sell to push all the way to the downside. Remember, we are in an overall downtrend, so we want the market to actually break our counter trend lines. So this is a counter trend line breaking strategy where we actually wait for the market to push all the way to the upside to give us volume, and once it breaks that specific trend, that's when we're going to be focusing on our sells to push all the way to the downside. And when we zoom even further to see what is going on right here, you can clearly see that the market didn't really give us much volume right here, but it did break out of this specific trend right here, this mini trend line right here, where price was actually kind of pushing up. It broke, it retested and started pushing all the way to the downside. And what we see right here is the very same thing happened. We had a counter trend line where the market actually broke with this nice candle right here. This actually indicates that the market wants to continue pushing to the downside, and we can look to push all the way to this level right here, and we could potentially push all the way to this level right there. But I want us to hop onto a smaller time frame like our daily and then for our chart to see what's really going on here and how we can actually catch further moves to push all the way to this level right here. When we hop onto the daily chart, we can clearly see that the market was actually pushing in a nice uptrend. It pushed all the way up and then it started breaking outside of this trend line right here. When price actually starts breaking out of our trend line, that is our cue that it wants to start pushing all the way to the downside. We can clearly see that it broke, it retested with a nice green candle, and then it started pushing all the way to the downside. What we have to be doing right now is waiting for price to give us a corrective move before we can continue pushing to the downside. The reason why we want to wait for a corrective move is because it is not wise for us to enter a sell in this position right here, because what the market is actually going to do is that it's going to give us a corrective move before it starts pushing all the way to the downside. So if you place your sell right here, chances are the market is going to hit your stop loss before it continues pushing into your direction. So you have to be very careful with how you trade these setups. You have to be very, very patient. The most important thing when it comes to trading is to wait for the market to actually give you a proper setup before you can go into your direction. Sometimes we know that the market is actually pushing to the downside, but the one thing that actually holds us back is us not having the patience to wait for the market to give us a proper corrective move before we can look to push with the market all the way to the downside. So from what we're seeing right here is that we know that the market is actually forming, it's in the process of actually forming a corrective move. It gave us a huge impulsive move. Remember, we have impulses and corrective moves within the market. Right now we had this huge impulsive move and the market is actually trying to give us a corrective move before we can push with the market further to the downside. What we're going to be doing is that we're going to be hopping onto even smaller time frames like our 4-hour and 1-hour charts to see what the market is actually doing and to see if we can actually catch these nice corrective moves and push with the market further to the downside. When I hop onto our hour chart, we can clearly see that the market actually broke out of this trend line right here. We can clearly see that the market gave us nice touches right here. We had the first touch right here, we had another touch right here, and we had a third touch right here. And what price actually did from there is that it broke outside of this trend line and it gave us a corrective move before it actually started pushing all the way to the downside. What I always say is that just because the market broke outside of a trend line doesn't necessarily mean that it is a signal for us to start selling. When the market actually starts breaking a trend line like this, you have to wait for the market to actually give you a proper corrective move. So you have to wait for this move to happen, let price push all the way to the downside, but give you a corrective move before you can actually start looking to sell with the market to push all the way to the downside. So do not rush these trades. So do not rush these trades. Wait for the market to give you a proper corrective move. And what you're going to be doing from there on is that you're going to be drawing your counter trend line. And as soon as the market actually starts breaking that counter trend line, that's when you would start placing your short positions to push with the market to the downside. So this would have been a nice trade that you could have taken to push with the market all the way to the downside and to reach your 90% rule right here. And you can clearly see that price could have hit your TP. As to what is currently happening, we can clearly see that the market is actually pushing to the downside. What we're going to be doing is that we're going to be drawing our counter trend line. Remember, this is a trend line breaking strategy. So we're going to be drawing our counter trend line and waiting for the market to do whatever it's doing. We don't rush it. We don't lead the market. We allow the market to do what it wants to do. And as soon as it starts breaking our trend line, that's when we're going to start preparing our sells to push to the downside. So we're going to wait for the market to actually break our counter trend line and start pushing all the way to the downside. Like I have mentioned, just because price is actually breaking out of our trend line doesn't necessarily mean that it is an entry signal for us to start taking our short positions to push all the way to the downside. But what we rather want to do is allow the market to break out of that trend, push all the way to the downside, give us that nice impulsive move pushing all the way to the downside. And right after that, as soon as the market starts pushing up, giving us a counter or a corrective move, that's when we're going to be drawing our counter trend line and waiting for the market to actually break out of that counter trend line. And as soon as it breaks and give us nice corrective moves, that's when we would actually start preparing our sells to push all the way to the downside. And this would be a beautiful trade to take, pushing with the market further to the downside. And that is just how you actually trade this specific strategy. I want us to look at a different pair and just to go over a couple of examples of what you could actually anticipate within the market and how to approach the chart when you're looking to trade this strategy. I want us to look at AUDJPY and see what actually happened there. Remember, we're going to be starting on our weekly chart, and from the weekly chart we are going to be marking our highest point. So we're going to mark our highest point, then we're going to mark our lowest point, and then we're going to mark our second highest point, and then our second lowest point, and we're just going to keep doing this until we have established a playground to see what the market has been doing. We don't necessarily want to know what the market did right here, but we want to know what the market is actually doing right here. We want to focus on the candles and the pivot points that are likely to influence price at its current state. So this is not necessarily going to influence what price is doing right here, but these levels right here are likely to influence what price is going to do when it starts moving forward. So this is the playground that we need to be focusing on. And from what we're seeing, we're going to be drawing our trend line, and we can clearly see that the market actually started pushing all the way to the upside. We were in a nice uptrend, and what I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to extend this trend line like this and put it like this, and we can clearly see that we had a nice push to the upside and we were in a clear uptrend. And as to what happened there, we can see that the market then broke out of this counter trend line right here. It broke out, gave us a nice corrective move, and it started pushing all the way to the upside, and it reached this point right here. And after reaching this, that's when price actually started reversing and pushing to the downside. We can now hop onto a smaller time frame like our daily chart to see if we can draw more trends to see what the price is actually doing. Can clearly see that we had a couple of touches right here where the market actually gave us a nice touch right here. So we have a nice touch right here, another touch right here, and we had a third touch right here. And what price is actually doing right here is actually indicating to us that it is slowing in momentum. So price is unable to keep pushing all the way to the upside. It is now giving us lower lows and lower highs, implying that price wants to start pushing to the downside, and we could potentially start looking for sales to push to the downside. And what we see is that price actually broke out of our trend line. It gave us this huge impulsive move. Remember, I always say that you have to wait for price to actually give you that impulsive move. Don't take this as an entry signal and try to trade it and push with the market to the downside, but rather wait for the market to actually break all the way outside of your trend line, push to the upside, give us a corrective move so that we can continue pushing with the market to the downside. I want us to hop onto an hour chart so that we can clearly see what's going on. I don't like entering on bigger time frames like our daily and 4-hour charts, because price is likely to give us a lot of drawdown when you look at bigger time frames, instead of just going down with your smaller time frames and trying to get those juicy entries. So what I see right here is that price actually broke out of our trend line. It gave us this huge impulsive move, and it started pushing all the way to the upside to give us a corrective move. And what we could have done there is that we could have drawn a counter trend line. We can clearly see that the market actually broke out of that trend and it started pushing all the way to the downside. And right now price is at a position where we can't really take sells. So you can't necessarily take a sell right here. The reason why you don't want to take a sell right here is because price is actually in its impulsive move. So you want to wait for price to actually give you a corrective move before you can move with the market to the downside. If you take your sell right here, price is actually going to push all the way to the upside, hit your stop loss, and then continue pushing to the downside. What you rather want to do is wait for the market to actually push to the upside and give you volume. And after pushing to the upside, you wait for your nice counter trend line to be broken and you get your retest. And that's when you would actually start preparing yourselves to push with the market all the way to the downside. And this is how you actually trade the strategy. What you want to do is that you want to look at the overall trend. You want to see what the market is actually doing. If price is in an uptrend, you know that you should be focusing on pushes to go to the upside. You want to move with the market. The trend is your friend. You want to move with the trend. You don't want to get caught up in a trend that is actually going all the way to the upside and you are busy selling within that trend. You want to move with the bigger moves and not get trapped within the market. So in this specific instance, we have established that price has actually broken our trend line with this huge impulsive move. You can clearly see that price moved sharply outside of our trend line, but we didn't take our sell right here. We rather waited for the market to push all the way to the upside to give us volume, draw our counter trend line, and wait for the market to break that specific trend line and push all the way to the downside. When it starts pushing down, we can clearly see that this was a clear break of our counter trend line, and this confirms that the market actually wants to go to the downside. But we have to wait for price to actually give us proper corrective moves so that we can push with the market to the downside. In this specific position, we wait for the market to give us a corrective move, and that's when we're going to be taking sells to the downside. This is a very simple strategy that you guys can actually use in your trading, and I can guarantee you that if you strictly follow the rules, you can make a lot of money using this specific strategy. You can grow your small accounts, you can even double your accounts if you strictly follow the rules and not rush to make money or to triple your account in a single day. Establish where the market is actually going and focus on where the market is going. If the market is pushing to the upside, focus on pushes to the upside. If the market is actually breaking your uptrend and moving to a downtrend, wait for the market to give you proper corrective move or retracement so that you can continue pushing with the market to the downside. This has been another exciting video. I hope you guys actually enjoyed and gained so much value from what I just actually illustrated in this specific video. If you guys did enjoy this video, leave a thumbs up, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.
You're supposed to put the first 500 in the safe and lose the combination.